The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the glow of the laptop screen. Amelia sat hunched over, her fingers dancing over the keyboard, typing out her latest true crime recap. She had a small but loyal following online, people fascinated by the darkest corners of the human mind. She recounted the chilling details of unsolved cases, missing persons, and infamous murders, dissecting each event with a meticulous calm that sent shivers down her viewers' spines. Tonight, she was working on the recap of a particularly grim case, a woman who had disappeared without a trace, only to have her body found days later in a remote part of the woods. There were whispers, rumors of strange noises heard in the area, of shadowy figures seen at the edge of the trees. Amelia loved these details. They gave the stories a mystery beyond the facts, something that lingered in the air even after the case was closed. The house was silent, save for the soft tapping of the keys. She had no roommates, no family to distract her. Just the rhythmic sound of typing and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards beneath her. The clock on the wall ticked away the time, a constant reminder that she'd been sitting in the same position for hours. Yet, despite the quiet, something felt off. A slight unease had settled in her chest, though she couldn't place why. Amelia stretched, her eyes blinking from the screen's harsh light. The room was cold, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee. She glanced around, looking at the walls cluttered with crime scene photos and newspaper clippings. A strange comfort had once come from them, each image a piece of a puzzle she loved solving. But now they felt like an unspoken weight, as if they were watching her. A soft sound from the corner of the room made her pause. It was faint, so faint that she wondered if it had just been the wind outside brushing against the window. But the wind hadn't been blowing. The night was still. She turned toward the sound, her eyes scanning the shadowed corner, but saw nothing unusual. The sound came again, this time louder, a soft scrape like something shifting in the dark. She let out a breath, forcing herself to focus. It was probably just the old house settling. There was no reason to be spooked. But as she turned back to the laptop, her gaze fell upon a new file that had appeared on her desktop. She hadn't opened it. She didn't recognize the name of the file. It simply read, "Final Recap." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't saved anything with that title. There had been no indication that anyone had access to her laptop. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the mouse, before a wave of curiosity overcame her. She clicked it open. The screen flickered briefly before displaying a video file. Hesitant, she hit play. The video began with static, followed by the distorted image of a woman. Her face blurred, her eyes wide and filled with terror. The background was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb above her head. The woman's voice was shaky, her words barely audible. "I know who did it. He's here with me. He won't leave me." The video cut off abruptly, leaving the screen black. Amelia's breath hitched and a cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She quickly closed the file, her fingers trembling. She should have turned the laptop off right then, should have walked away. But something held her in place, a strange fascination with the unknown that she couldn't shake. The clock on the wall chimed softly, signaling the hour. The tick-tick-tick of the second hand was the only sound, louder now, almost deafening. Amelia's mind raced. She knew the woman in the video had been the subject of one of her past recaps. The case had been closed years ago. The man who had been convicted of her murder was long behind bars. Or so they thought. She had never considered the possibility that someone involved might still be out there, lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, the air grew thick, stifling. She felt the temperature drop, a chill creeping up her spine as if the room itself was watching her. She glanced around again, but this time, her eyes lingered on the space above the door, where the shadows seemed darker than they should have been. Her pulse quickened as she realized the shadows weren't just shadows. They were moving. A soft rustling came from the far side of the room, like something dragging across the floor. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She wasn't alone. She knew it now with an almost primal certainty. Someone or something was in the room with her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she turned slowly, half expecting to see a figure standing behind her. But there was nothing, only the darkness of the corner. Yet the sense of being watched was overwhelming. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she slowly reached for her phone on the desk. Before she could touch it, the lights flickered and then went out completely, plunging the room into blackness. Panic gripped her chest. She scrambled to find her phone, her hands shaking. But it wasn't there. She swore she had left it right beside her laptop. The air felt heavier now, suffocating. The only sound was the soft rustling again, as if something was moving closer to her. Then a whisper. It was low and distant at first, like the sound of wind moving through an old house, but it grew clearer, closer. The voice sounded like it was right behind her. "Amelia." She froze, her blood running cold. The voice was unmistakable. It was the woman from the video. She spun around, her heart hammering in her chest, but the room remained empty. The shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, reaching out like fingers. The silence was deafening now. Then the computer screen flickered back on, casting an eerie glow over the room. The file titled "Final Recap" had opened again, but this time it was different. The woman's blurred face was gone, replaced by a single sentence, typed in bold, red letters. "You're next." Amelia's scream caught in her throat as the shadows closed in around her. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the distorted face of the woman, grinning in the darkness. And then, nothing.